welcome to Elevating Your Life. So happy to have you with us today, and I'm just so happy to share my fantastic guest with all of you. Today we have Christopher Sansone. He is a seasoned life, leadership, and spiritual teacher and coach with over 25 years of experience, holding a PhD in human development from Fielding Graduate Institute and integrating human development theory, transpersonal psychology, and post traumatic growth into an evidence based holistic practice. He has empowered hundreds of clients through his training at the Coactive Training Institute to lead with purpose, integrity, and self awareness. He is the author of the book Longing, A Pilgrimage to Your Quiet Power Within. How awesome! Which explores the ache so many of us carry, not as something broken, but as a sacred signal guiding us back to wholeness, compassion, and inner truth. Christopher weaves psychology and spiritual wisdom into a deeply humane conversation. How fantastic! Chris, welcome to the show.
Well, Paula, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, I'm so grateful. Well, first off, would you like to share a little more of your background and then what triggered you to write your fantastic book?
Yeah, thank you for asking both those questions. The first one having to do with my background, it's been kind of a circuitous route that really became ignited in midlife. I was approaching 40 and decided the business field wasn't for me, though I had ascended the ranks and was quite achieved in my particular area of expertise. I decided I was going to go back to school. And I had children and house and wife and cars and all of the things that actually uh, helped me to make the decision. My wife was very supportive at the time, and I needed to really return home to myself and be who I truly was. So that's where I found the Fielding Graduate Institute. It was a magnificent program. It was adult learner centered and really respecting the way that we as adults learn through experience and reflection. And so once in that, my world opened up. It was fantastic. I simultaneously certified through the coaching, well, it's called then the Coaches Training Institute, now the Coactive Training Institute, CTI. And so my doors further opened. And then my doors really blew open when I joined the faculty and coaching staff. I was an administrator with the Hoffman Institute, which teaches the Hoffman quadrinity process, which really brought all of my learning, all of my coaching prowess and experiences into focus around resolving the patterns and habitual behaviors of our past that's passed down to us. I refer to that as inherited lovelessness, borrowing the term from Pamela Cribby. And how then, once freed from the need to live out those habitual ways, we can then step into a place of choice and discover what's within us as the most deep, the most powerful aspect of ourself, and that spirit I refer to as soul. Slightly different dimensions, but we're talking about that same part of being human. And stepping into that, I saw, wow, this is my true calling. You ask about the book, um, Longing. Longing, a pilgrimage to your quiet power within is a great title for me too, because I had no idea I was going to write this book. I didn't set out to write it. I had a session with a gifted medium who channeled my guides, my spirit guides. Victoria had told me at some point you're going to write a book. Your guides are presenting an image of a book that you are to write. And I said, oh, fine. Okay, good. And they said, and she said, and don't worry, the information will come. You'll know. And I wasn't much for holding my patience. I was just going to get right to it. And in this typical fashion of a researcher as I had been trained, I said, all right, I'm going to go research higher dimensions of human consciousness. I mean, my background in human development, went right to it, developed quite a bit of literature review, and got back with Victoria about 3 months later, and she's giving me the stop. No, no, they are telling me, no, you're doing this wrong. This is not how this goes. You are to receive. That's all fine and good and it will benefit you to know this information, but that's not the information that you are here to share. And so, a bit defiant, I had to admit, during the time of COVID, sandwiched between the recent death of my father that December 19 and the hospice when my mother would then pass in May of the 2020 year. Within that short window of time, I was sequestered at home, and as we all were, sheltering in place. Hoffman was closed down. We couldn't do one-to-one student live work. We were doing online stuff, and I had time and I had space. So, as I said, a bit defiant, I get out my tablet of paper and a pen, lay down on the floor one evening. I said, "Okay, what?" And I'm a lifelong meditator. I dropped into a meditative state. I started writing a poem. I had never written a poem in my life. And this poem flowed. Later, I titled it Begin. And my guides then told me, in no uncertain terms, that would be the first thing in your book. Put that there and listen. And so I continued to listen. And I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, filled up an entire tablet of paper. And this happened then again for the ensuing 2 weeks. And I then at that point said, okay, I get it. I get it. This is in the mystical. So for me, it was a further opening of my heart and mind to what could be. I had to work with the information as channeled messages often are. They're redundant. They can be a bit confusing. So it took me quite a while to reassemble it into a readable form. And I got good editors and worked through the process. But it's been a journey, Paula, I did not set out to create.
Isn't that awesome? Isn't
It
that
is awesome.
amazing?
Yeah, yeah.
What we put out there and what we can create and what comes to us.
What comes to us, and one thing I
Yes.
learned when I that second appointment with Victoria, where the guides had showed me, no, they said, you have this as a life mission. You pre-planned this before this incarnation. So follow. They were very stern. They were very clear. You need to listen. Just not get on your horse and start riding. You need to listen. And so I learned a distinction between how we live our lives with purpose, and often many of us have more than one purpose, and how we may come into this incarnation with a mission, something we are going to complete. We're going to deliver something. It could be as writing a book, or it could be as founding a school, or creating a new position, or running a political office that benefits others, or whatever it might be. But it's an outcome. And I
Yeah.
realized I had this mission. And a further um, affirmation of that, I requested some book endorsements. One of those I requested was of Robert Schwartz, one of my most admired writers. Has written Your Soul's Plan and other outstanding books. And he said, I'll I'll give you an endorsement, but it may be a couple of months as my schedule's fairly full. So I waited a couple of days later. I got an email back from him. He said, I did have the time, as it turns out. Here is your endorsement. And congratulations on fulfilling your life mission. And I hadn't spoken a word to Robert about that, but he was so spot on. I said, okay, if I ever needed confirmation, I just received it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's so true how things can come to us. When I wrote my Why Am I So Happy book, I'd been writing it and stuff coming to me, but then life's real busy and I was like, okay, I need to finish it. I need calm. I went down to Sedona, Arizona,
Mhm.
and I meditated at the vortex, went back to my room, and I literally, what came to me, I was writing and writing until my arm hurt and finish my book. I mean, open up to that and so much can come to us, can't it?
Absolutely. I agree. And there's a process of suspending our disbelief so that we can be open to that flow. I think all of us have that capacity, whether it's comes through clairsentience, clairaudience, whatever, and transmission through writing. All of us have that capacity, but a lot of us don't really allow it. I think is the proper word is allow it to open ourselves to it, right? Would you use
Yeah.
that as a descriptor for your own experience? Allow.
Yeah, allowing it is everything, I believe. Allowing and opening that door. And when you say that would be just not just writing, but in discovering a life path you'd never dreamed of,
Mm,
or a
mm.
life mission, or, something, I mean, so much, but yeah, that allowing, that's huge, Chris.
Yes, yes, yes. And then there's something about in that allowing, stepping into a commitment to surrender. That's different than the distinction is that it's not submission. So it's not like you wave the white flag kind of surrender, I give up, but it's like I give into, I lean into the greater knowing. And as a receptor of that, I open myself. I open my channels to hearing, to feeling, to sensing, to seeing the various ways that it may come to me. And that's surrender. And that's powerful.
Yes, that's huge. That's a great message to realize because
Hmm.
that's powerful.
Hmm.
And in the book, you share 5 real life stories of people in crisis and the
Yes.
stories about moments of suffering and how that can lead to courage and spiritual insight. Share a little bit about that and
Yes.
some other things that you really point out in your book.
Well, to begin with, I share my own story of some at age 15 years, I encountered this situation that was a turning point for me to really claim my own sense of self and to by asserting my own courage. And I wasn't unafraid. I was a very fearful kind of situation, but I stepped into that point of courage and made a choice. I realized that over the years, particularly working with as many people as I have, hundreds of people who have had what most of us would consider fairly ordinary lives on the surface, everyone, everyone has some point of heroism within their past, or it will unfold in the future once again. So we have these repeated experiences of what Joseph Campbell entitled The Hero's Journey. In that hero's journey, there's always a point of choice just after initiation into our quest where we are invited, where we are then committed to a change. And that change doesn't come up without adversity. It doesn't come without pain and suffering. Because it seems to be that for most of us, at most points of our life, we need to have a disruption. We need to have something that really gets our attention, or else we go on in sort of an ordinary way, as
Wow.
most of us would do in most of our
Yeah.
lives. But that triggering, that awakening often happens through pain and suffering. So, what I did in my past, and you mentioned this in our introduction, I had studied post-traumatic growth theory. And post-traumatic growth theory asserts that within any kind of dramatic change, there is the potential for expansion, for a deeper grounding of who we are at the ego personality level, but then also at the deeper spiritual level. And it was at that spiritual level that I was most interested because I had had some of those experiences myself. I having witnessed then hundreds of people who've gone through the Hoffman Quadrinity process, hundreds of people that I coached. There was always adversity. And for some people, they came out stronger. Not everyone, but most people came out stronger. It was a kind of a resonance with something greater, more powerful within themselves, within their self, of having landed in this mystical part of who they were they had no idea or only small inkling of, that catapulted them into a new way of being. And so of course, the more I'm reading about this and such, I was led into, I say led, as it may be, led into readings by writings by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who talked about he called them calamities, these kind of catastrophes we have in life. I'd also been studying in my work at the Fielding Graduate Institute around the sudden shifts that scientific theory, so ways of thinking about the world and interpreting our reality, how those sudden shifts occur over time. And within those are diamonds, are just nuggets of gold if we are aware of them, if we honor them. And so I purposely looked for 5 people. I ended up with 5. I looked for people who would be willing to tell their stories about their adversity, and I had a pretty good idea, had already committed to a higher level of awareness of self as spirit embodied. And voila, to the person, I was just honored to have heard their stories and to much more be able to convey their stories to others who will benefit from them. They were courageous people, not always feeling courageous, but in the end, courageous in their actions.
Yes. And the title of your book, Chris,
Yeah.
Longing, A Pilgrimage to Your Quiet Power Within. I mean, just getting that message out there
Mm.
that no matter who you are or where you are, you have a quiet power within.
Yes, Paula.
What would you say to everyone about that?
I would say you got it. What we get so consumed with are distractions from that, which once we get to it, once we have the experience and it becomes known and accessible to us, it seems a little ridiculous, all of these distractions and these misbeliefs we have about who we are. For instance, we get so invested in this sort of personality, they'll call it the egoic self, and the trappings of that, the materialism, the achievements, the status, the prestige, the implied security of all that. And we forget that we have this, or we ignore that we have this outstanding aspect of ourself that is so quiet because it respects our free will. It's not going to clobber us over the head and say, wake up, I'm your soul within. You are a temple, a sacred temple carrying me. It doesn't speak in those terms. It waits for our call. Because again, we are free will beings. We chose free will. Now, sometimes it comes on, and others have had near-death experiences or kind of, like I say, calamities that I refer to then as sacred calamities. They're endeavors of the soul. So there's some wake-up points that are quite pronounced, but essentially we have the choice how we will respond to those moments. We are not forced into anything. So it's quiet. It's ever present. And it's deep and it's resonant. And once we learn to listen for the language, to speak the language of our soul, because our soul does not speak the language of logic. It speaks another language. Once we enter that into that conversation is where we land within squarely our own immense power.
I love it. I love it. What would you say then about the value of connecting to our authentic self?
The value of that, yeah. Gosh, that's a really, really good question. I wish I could say inner peace. I wish I could say absolute contentment. And while those are aspects of it, I don't know that that's universally true. There are uh, those in the world who have reached very high levels of consciousness where they are aware of the unity of all. So they do not see divisiveness. They can see individuality, but it's not a point of divisiveness where we're separate and we then argue, we fight, we differentiate, exclude or include as it may be. But there's a kind of deeper connection that we as human beings are on quest to have. And that connection has to do with our divine origins. And this is what I identify as the longing that all of us experience. We just get confused by it, but all of us have this longing to reconnect to that aspect of source that from which we came. And so once connected there, we have achieved the ultimate of all of the karmic experiences, all the past lives we've had. We've achieved the ultimate. And then there's no reason to keep returning into this form of or these incarnations of the body. So once we have that understanding, that deeper connection, we can say we've arrived. It doesn't mean necessarily that we're walking around happy and content. It may mean that we see the absurdity of this world. We still love. We're immersed in love. And we can yet see the absurdity and the harshness and the catastrophes that happen that we impose on one another. And so that can be very difficult to experience at such deep levels. But we know we have a deeper sense of knowing what this is and where we are and who we are within this. And I know that sounds rather abstract. I'd like to say we all,
Yeah,
have a great life and all's good and manifest whatever we want, but I don't believe that's the case.
yeah. And, you know, that powerful message that it is makes me feel like what a freedom really that can give us.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
freedom.
That's a key word, I think, is freedom to express, to
Yeah,
choose, to really have that kind of discernment that is responding to that wonderful power that within us,
yeah,
that deep strength that we all hold as human beings by letting go,
yeah.
letting go.
We'll
That's
love
freedom.
ourselves. Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
boy, this is so exciting. Uh,
I'm
so,
excited by it too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We have about 4 minutes left in the show. What last message do you want to share? And please share how everyone can get a copy of your book and
Yes.
any
Yes.
information like that, please.
Yes. First, I'll say this. Talking with you as we have, writing the book as I did has been a pure joy. Not to say that sometimes during writing my book, it wasn't challenging, or at times I felt like, what am I doing? Questioning and doubting. I always loved it because of the growth that I experienced in writing this book, in the discovery of what's within longing. And understanding that the longing that we feel, that I feel, has a purpose that's divine. Okay, great. That's the gift that I intend to bring to share with those interested in reading Longing, A Pilgrimage to Your Quiet Power Within. So, where to find it? It's on pre-order now. It's distributed through Simon and Schuster, can be found through Simon and Schuster's website, and they have various links. One of the obvious ones is Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and wherever books are sold locally, you can pre-order it. June 2nd is the release date. And I love to hear from anyone who would be listening to your podcast, your lovely podcast, which not only talks about longing, but so much other around love and the purpose of suffering and connecting and finding the joy in life. They can reach me by email, Chris, Chris, Chris at livelifesoul.com. My website is livelifesoul.com. And I'll be much more active on Facebook and Instagram and all the other YouTube and great things. We're doing a campaign now to really get the message out.
Oh, I just have to say thank you for all that you're sharing. And oh my gosh, the messages in your book and everything, the differences, this is going to make in so many lives, so much
Thank you.
that we can reach out to each other and share. Uh,
Yes.
One last quick question. Do you see yourself writing another book after this?
Oh, that is such a good question. That's also a message that came through to me via my guides. And I've been having enough ideas about that, about what it might look like. I was just penciling some things, little anecdote on this. Part of my of pulling the book together included me getting away and really bringing the writing into a script form that was readable and understandable. And I spent about a week down in a wonderful lodge in Taos, New Mexico. During that time, I brought my watercolors and I painted some of the images that I wanted to do. I did that on my father's birthday in 2025. I said, this could be the basis for my next book. Uh, 20 this year, this February 19th, for no good reason, I just walk over, pick up the drawing, and start writing more on it. And I dated it, and I realized exactly to the day, a year ago, my father's birthday, I added to this piece.
Oh,
So I wonder,
yes,
it
yes,
might be all right there saying,
yep,
hello. Yeah,
that says it. I tell you, it's amazing.
it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm
Again,
just,
Paula, thank you for your interest, your time, and just who you are and how you show up and what you
thank,
foster in this life. I greatly appreciate it.
thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you so much. And I am just so honored to have met you and have the opportunity to share you with my audiences. It's just
thank
a
you.
joy and just the beautiful messages that you share with all of us. I'm so grateful.
Mm.
Everyone out there, love, hugs, and blessings. Thank you for joining us. Love, hugs, and blessings, Chris.
Thank you, Paula. Bye now.
Bye.